It doesn't fit with the evolution fairy tale. So then we ignore it. We hide it. We pretend it doesn't exist. As I said, that's not science, and it's not academic. It's just propaganda. So over here in Chapter 16, we've got some buildings. I want to point out a couple of 3 buildings here. We've got about 10 minutes. So. A startling surprise awaited Captain Don Henry on that particular day in 1976. He was 40 miles off the southern coast of Florida directing sonar readings on the ocean floor. Suddenly, an immense pyramid-shaped structure showed up. It was 300 feet below the surface. Subsequent underwater closed-circuit TV was to show the pyramid to be about 420 feet high. It's a veritable skyscraper, nearly the size of the Great Pyramids of Egypt. When 12 other pyramids turned up on a NASA satellite photograph of the Amazon jungle. Noted author Charles Berlitz and Dr. Manson Valentine, curator of the Miami Science Museum, excitedly organized a major scientific expedition to the underwater pyramid, the first of its kind, which set out with a crack team of 15 archaeologists, researchers, and divers early in August of 1978. At the same time, a NASA-supported expedition led by Florida explorer Philip Miller set out for the Amazon jungles of Peru, accompanied by a documentary film team to investigate the foliage-covered pyramids found there. I'm intrigued by an apparent relationship here. Huge ruins throughout the world generally resemble each other in construction, as well as in geographical and astronomical alignment. What is more, constructions which are technologically impossible today face us. Precise construction and colossal size indicate that the builders had unknown techniques and energy sources at their disposal. It makes one feel that these magnificent, time-defying ruins that still exist after 4,000 years can hardly be the work of primitive barbarians. Surely they are the scientific instruments of an advanced universal civilization. So join me on a grand tour, and you'll see what I mean. Things that can't happen have happened here. The site is built 12,000 feet above sea level. This is very oxygen-poor air in which the slightest exertion can cause nausea and worse, and yet blocks of up to 200 tons were maneuvered over distances of up to 90 miles in rarefied air. This is not possible by muscular strength. This grand complex was built with a technical skill embarrassing to us and by a method which is totally unknown to us today. Here was a city of startling dimensions. Acres and acres lie covered with truncated pyramids, artificial hills, lines of monoliths, platforms, underground rooms, and giant gates which incorporate architecture beyond our technical scope today. Many large gateways were built from a single stone. The Gate of the Sun is the biggest carved monolith in the world. It is a single block of rock, 10 feet high and 6 feet wide. The size of some of the buildings is astonishing. The fortress of Acapana, 650 by 496 feet, was once a pyramid 167 feet high. The Sun Temple was on a platform 440 feet long by 390 feet wide, composed of blocks of rock 100 to 200 tons each. Walls of the temple complex itself had blocks of 60 tons each. Steps of the stone stairway were 50 tons apiece. Here were terraced temples like those of faraway Babylon and Nineveh. The walls of the palace were 220 feet long by 180 feet wide. Its throne room was 160 feet long by 130 feet wide. The steps from the palace entrance were washed by the lake now receding and 15 miles away. The paved court under our feet is 80 feet square, with a covered gallery 45 feet on one side. Court and hall are one single block of dressed stone. One single block. Building blocks. One is 36 feet long, 7 feet wide, fitted without lime or mortar and without any joint showing. Nearly every stone is accurately cut and polished, nicked, mortised, and occasionally even beveled. Water conduits have a completely modem shape with smooth cross-sections, polished inner and outer surfaces, and accurate edges. See these half pipes? They have grooves and corresponding protrusions that fit together. Plundered Spanish invaders stole the interlocking copper or silver keys which secured the stonework from earthquake damage until they had survived for thousands of years. Subsequent earthquakes leveled the structures. As late as the 19th century, there were imposing colonnades to admire, of which sadly there is now no trace. Many of the great buildings were dynamited, and then untold treasures disappeared. One 24-foot statue remains. But the records are there. You see, when the Spanish got there, they made records of it. And then they tore them down, blew them up, to salvage the gold, silver, and the metals, shipped them off to Spain. Here's the point. Here are buildings at 12,000 feet in Bolivia that we could not build today, let alone at 12,000 feet. And we're being told, you know, in our movies and in our books, that these great monuments were built by slave labor, and they were built by hand, without wheels, without pulleys, just by pure muscle. That's preposterous poppycock. You talk about fantasy world. Hey, you talk about fairy tales. That's a fairy tale. But it's better than that. All right, we are reviewing the book called Dead Men's Secrets. So last time I gave you an introduction, and I said, hey, listen, there's some big monuments around the world. In fact, in this chapter 16, there are 57 of these examples of architectural marvels and wonders that are built around the world that we can't build today. You know, it's one thing to say, well, yeah, we could duplicate that today. But when you've got monuments out here, as I pointed out last time, you got a block of rock that weighs 200,000, not 200 tons, 200,000 tons, which is 5 Queen Marys. Somebody quarried that block of rock and then moved it and set it in place. There isn't anybody in the world today that can do that. The entire Russian apparatus, the American, the Russians, the French, the British, the Europeans, the Chinese, all combined, can't pick it up and move it. Now, somebody did that past tense. Now, how'd they do that? We don't know. We ain't got a clue. And there's 57 of those stories here in the book. It's called Dead Men's Secrets. You can probably get a copy of it down at Barnes & Noble. It's fairly new. It's 2004. The author's name is Jonathan Gray. And it's put out by an outfit called, kind of an odd publisher here. I've never heard this name before. They call themselves Teach Services Incorporated. Published by Teach Services Incorporated. They got a webpage. It's www.teachservices.com. And it's TEACHS is in capitals, and ERVICES.com is in lowercase. It's the way they've got it here in the book. I'm very impressed by the book. I have heard about these stories. I have heard about batteries in the Museum of Baghdad. And I've heard of airplanes out of Ecuador, model airplanes, you know, little models of airplanes that were jets. You know, and today we would look at that and say, my God, that's a jet airplane. And made out of silver, you know, little ornaments and things like that. And you hear about these little stories, the 14-foot skeleton I told you about last time that was in the museum up in Chicago, disappeared. And this author points out that the Smithsonian is sitting on warehouses full of this stuff. And they won't put it out. They haven't destroyed it. In some cases they have. It's been destroyed. But much of it is in the warehouses. And they're not putting it out on display. It doesn't fit evolution. And if it doesn't fit evolution, then we don't put it up. And so this guy wrote a book. See how many pages are in here. It's a pretty thick book. It's like 300 pages. Come on, page numbers. Show me your stuff here. Oh, my God. Tell me there's no page numbers. Here we are, 350. Yeah, it's 350 pages or more. 350 pages, and it talks about geography, astronomy, cosmology, mathematics, metallurgy, large-scale construction, construction techniques, social organization, engineering, mechanical devices, everyday items, clothing, art, medicine, flight, space travel, ancient science and civilization, all of it documented, all of it with physical evidence that we have uncovered over the last 200, 300, 400 years.